Hey, so I've been working through the DreamFactory demo server and our new DreamFactory MCP client, and been working a lot with the Microsoft SQL Server worldwide imports, dummy data, and asking a lot of questions with Cursor 1.0 being released. Decide now's the best time to hook up the DreamFactory MCP to Cursor and leverage Sonnet 4 and see what type of results we can get. Luckily, Cursor made it super easy out of the box to hook things up. So as you can see here, in terms of config, we plug in our Dream Factory URL, which is just our demo server, and we're talking to our SQL Server API, and then a corresponding API key, and we can start chatting with our data instantaneously. But let's actually run through really quick what that means when we are chatting with our data, because we don't want to just be dumping all of our data into these LLMs, right? We want to provide the deterministic controls of our data set, where that is the key differentiator with Dream Factory's MCP versus native SQL MCPs or database specific MCPs. So what we can take a look at here is that SQL Server API. And as you can see, we have a list of all those worldwide imports example tables. So the list goes on here. But what we can do is actually just jump straight over to role-based access control. And this is where we're going to set the explicit access. So I will say read only all access worldwide imports. And I'll set that to active. And same thing for our description here. In our access overview, I will be selecting that SQL Server API. And just in the interest of time, I'll say star or everything, but I'm exposing it only as read access. I'll go ahead and save that. And lastly, I will create a new API key so that read-only role I am attaching to the key, setting it to active, creating that. And now when I search, I should see that API key. I can copy that and come back to Cursor and drop in that key here and start asking questions. So first question, just to start things off, are which orders were expected on May 18th, 2016? It's going to get the tables here. I'll allow it to run that tool. It's going to see that there's a bunch of tables that could have that information. Luckily, these LLMs have gotten more and more impressive, and it's going to get the schema for each of the relevant tables and going to continue to run until we can find our answer here. And here we go. So there were 42 sales orders expected on May 18th, 2016. And it goes into more detail, giving us insights into all of those orders, which is nice, but a little bit more than what I was asking for. Most importantly, so let's actually confirm that it drew the right conclusion here. So I'm just going to pull up dbeaver over here, and I've already concocted this into a standard SQL query. And as you can see, the order count is in fact 42. So we know we're working with the right data, and we are validating that the LLM is not hallucinating in any way, shape, or form here. So very impressive first go. Now, what we can do is ask a little bit more sophisticated questions as well. Like this one I found interesting was ranking the products by profitability within each category, showing market share and growth trajectory. So this is pretty cool as an executive if you wanted to get more robust insights into all of your data systems. And we're just going to let this run out. and draw a conclusion for us. So has to understand the data structures, of course, and get us all of that data. Now, while this is running, it is important to note that I granted it access to everything, right? This API key, while only read-only access, so it can only perform gets, it still has access to run and search across everything in that database, which is a pretty big no-no and quite scary for any security official to see that, hey, you're just letting AI run wild against your data. That is where DreamFactory comes in and provides a very useful role-based access layer for granting explicit controls over your data set. As anybody would know, that's going to take a lot of time if you're trying to implement that as a homegrown solution and so forth. Now, with Dream Factory, you have a point and click or even an API interface for automating that. So you are granting explicit access controls to your data sets before it even gets to the LLM. So just like that, it was able to concoct a response for us after it was able to crawl through and read through all the relevant database information. So from its analysis, it was able to look at the products from stock items, go into the categories, and then also look at the sales performance and map all of those categories for us and draw a pretty uh, insightful conclusion for us that talks about a specific stock item one and our double-sided bubble wrap and talk to us about some of the profitability and give us some recommendations as well and some key insights to that data set. Now, what I'm going to do from here is actually start a new chat. And so we are starting clean with no additional context here. And I'm going to remove this key because, again, that key had all access. And I'm going to go back to Dream Factory and create a new role. And this role is predefined as a sales analyst. So this sales analyst only has access to the sales orders, sales order lines, sales invoices, and sales invoice lines. Now, what we can do with this is actually say save, and with our API key, we will generate one that is sales analyst, and that sales analyst role is available to us here. We'll create that. And just to circle back here to that role, that sales analyst role has access to the schema endpoint, which is providing, as in the word, the schema to that entire database, but is not able to see individual table records. That is reserved for these table endpoints. So hopefully this Sonnet 4 is able to see that it has there are tables that are relevant to the question, but if it tries to access it, it will not be able to, and instead ask us to add some permissions. So let's see how that all plays out. Let's go back and grab that key. So that key name was, um, what did I name that key? Sales analyst key. I will take that key, come back into cursor, and save that. Now we're able to ask a question like analyze the complete customer profitability lifecycle from acquisition through fulfillment, identifying which customer segments drive the highest margins, and recommending operational optimizations across the entire value chain to maximize ROI. This is hopefully going to fail because we only gave it access to the sales orders, order lines, invoices, and invoice lines. Now, this is going to tell us that it is unable to fulfill our request due to connectivity issues. So there is no data being returned when it is trying to query those specific data sets, as it is going to need access to all of the sales information as well as purchasing information such as suppliers, orders, and so forth. The beauty of DreamFactory is we are linking those permissions to this API key. So I don't actually have to make any changes to that API key. I can simply come back to our role interface and I can look for that sales analyst role. And what I'm going to do is actually say, you know what? You have access to all the schema and all of the tables to help me answer this question. This would be like a CEO role, right? And what we can now say back in cursor is try again. And let's see as it gets all of those tables. And great, I now have access to all of those tables. Noting again, I did not have to make any changes to our MCP config with the API key. It is automatically updated and recognized those permissions. And that works both ways. If I wanted to revoke permissions on the fly, I can do so as well, ensuring that the LLM is never overreaching. So we'll let this run and see what type of response we get. And after fulfilling all of those requests, Sonnet was able to draw a conclusion for us. So it was able to perform profitability lifecycle analysis across that entire system. And I'll just say that executive summary, right, of customer category 4 of supermarkets demonstrates significantly higher profitability potential, while category 3, which is novelty shops, represents the largest volume segment but with lower individual margins, and actually gives us a full breakdown with that data set from our APIs. Now, if you'd like to see this in action with your own data set and learn how we are securing your data at the data layer before ever exposing it to that LLM, please come talk to us at dreamfactory.com.